my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are going to be doing another product review from Arteza. They were nice enough to send me a few other art supplies that I've never tried before and I thought would be a lot of fun to work with. Also, they were nice enough to send me another discount code for you guys, so if you guys want 10% off your next Arteza purchase, just enter BubblyLeaf2. I'll leave it up on the screen and I'll have it also in my description for you. And that is valid until September 8th. Anyways, we are going to be making a bunch of leopard geckos today. I thought it'd be a fun project to work with the new supplies and getting the patterns and stuff on the body. Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so before we start on today's project, I'm going to show you the art supplies that we have to work with. We're going to be working with two new art supplies that I've never tried before and I'm really interested in messing around with them. The first thing that we have is a 3D fabric paint set. I'm really interested in this because we could add some texture to our pieces. So this comes with a 30 count of paint, and then it also has 2 paint brushes and then some sticker things that I'm assuming you use like stencils. This pack is probably set up more for like t-shirt designs and stuff like that, but of course we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be doing something completely different with it. And then the second thing that we have is a 30 count of fabric markers. Now these I'm actually really excited to use because I always thought markers would be so much easier to use than painting fabric. The only thing is most markers bleed and are not water safe, so they would end up washing out and stuff like that. And even though my creatures are not supposed to get wet, things happen, and the last thing I want is for someone to get their creatures slightly damp and everything get ruined. So if these things work like I think they're gonna work, I'm really excited, and this could add a lot of detail to our pieces. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch everything. That way we can see all the different colors for both the markers and the paint, because we're not going to use all the colors, but I want you to see what we have to work with later. So I'm going to start with the fabric markers, and I'm going to be using a type of fabric that I plan on using with them to see how it works. So this is a type of fabric that's slightly fuzzy, so I want to see how it works instead of just being on like a t-shirt type fabric. Now one thing you guys need to know is that these will bleed through the fabric. It actually says on the pack to have it on something so that you don't bleed through, but I didn't read it, I just got excited and started using them right away. So I did get some of it to bleed through onto the counters, but everything washed off just fine because I noticed it before it dried. So it's not a big deal, that's completely my fault. But anyways, these are all the marker colors. They look really vibrant. I'm really excited to see if they actually stay this way after we try to wash them. Now I'm going to take swatches of the 3D paint and see what we have there. So I'm just going to do a tiny bit because I don't want to waste anything, same with the markers, but I do want you to see what everything looks like. So it looks like the 3D paints have a lot of variation. The first 2 rows seem to be basic colors, they're just very vibrant versions. And then the third row of paint, I was actually surprised I didn't notice this before, is actually metallics. And then the last row is neon colors, and it even has a glow-in-the-dark version. So I'm actually really excited to try this. We won't be trying it today, but I'm going to do it in a future project. So we'll see if we can actually get it to work and glow in the dark, because that could be a lot of fun. So after we get the swatches, I'm going to let everything dry. It says the markers need 6 hours and the 3D paints need to have about 72 hours before we do anything with them. And both of these do need to be heat set. It says to use an iron, but I believe the main reason it says that is because it's for t-shirt design. They each have their own instructions on how to heat them up, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using an embossing gun, which is basically just a heat gun, and I'm going to kind of heat set everything with that. I figured it would be easier than using an iron, plus I don't have an iron and I'd rather get an embossing gun than buy an iron. So I'm going to heat set everything, and then what we're going to do is we're going to soak these in water and see if they actually bleed or do anything. Now I left these in for about 15-20 minutes and it looks like nothing really happened to either the paint or the markers. There doesn't seem to be any bleeding or anything, and there's no color added to the water. The water is completely clean other than some fuzz from the fabric. So this is actually extremely exciting for me because I can't wait to try these out on my art dolls. So let's get started. So we're going to start on the fabric. So I have my pattern all laid out. I left it very simple. So for the pattern, I have the main body, I have the front legs and the back legs, and we're going to use this to cut our fabric pieces out. After we have everything cut out, we're going to start painting our fabric. Now before we start with the markers and everything like that, I'm going to actually use my acrylics like I normally do, and that's just because I didn't want to start off with a yellow. I wanted to start off with a light khaki, and I want it to have a hint of yellow before we add the very vibrant yellows to it. After I got everything nice and damp, I realized it'd probably be easier to use the squirt bottle to paint the fabric than it would be to just paint over with a brush. So what I did was I mixed in some yellow paint into the water of my squirt bottle, and then I started spritzing everything again. After I got the yellow down, I cleaned everything out, got fresh water, and then I mixed in some gray with new water. And with the gray, I'm just going to be going over the tails. And then after we did the fabric for the body, we also needed to paint our legs. So here are all the legs that I need to make my 5 leopard geckos. And I basically did the same thing. I got them all wet, I added yellow, and then I also added a little bit of gray. Okay, so all of our fabric is nice and dried from adding the acrylic paint to it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start on using the markers. Now what I want to do with the fabric markers is I really want to define the markings on the back of the geckos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the yellows, and then I think I picked like 3 or 4 different colors that I'm also going to use. So I'm starting with the yellow. I'm going to lay out some spots, and this stuff actually takes a little bit to dry, so I first started by smearing it with my finger, and then I realized my finger is going to get raw doing that, so I dampened a paper towel and I started kind of blending everything together with that. So you can actually blend these markers, you just need to add a tiny bit of water to it. So again, I started with the yellow, and then after I had my spots laid out, I took an orange and started tracing around the spots. While I was doing this, I was also blending it in, that way I didn't have a very striking line. And then after that, I took more of a reddish orange color and I started adding polka dots. So I just kind of tapped the fabric over and over. Now I do recommend being careful when you're doing this with markers because obviously you could ruin the tip, so you want to be gentle when you're doing this. So for these spots, I started more in the middle of the body and I was using more of an orangish red for this, and then as I got further out, I started going with more of a brown or khaki color. And then lastly, I decided to use the black marker and I went over and added large polka dots to the body. I kept it very random and I tried not adding a lot, I just wanted hints of it here and there. So for the 3D paint, I'm going to start with a white kind of in the middle because I want to make the spine of the gecko kind of stand out. And then I switched over to a yellow, I added some khaki here and there, and then lastly, just like the markers, I did a black. Okay, so now I need to let all the 3D paint dry as well. Sadly, this is going to take about 72 hours. Afterwards, I'm going to heat set everything and then we can start on the sewing. So while that is drying, we're going to start on the clay heads. Okay, so the first thing that we need for our clay head is a form to build off of. So I'm going to take a lump of tinfoil and kind of make like an arrow shape. I'm going to round off the edges and we're going to kind of make a base at the end of this to hold on to. This is going to be where we're going to connect it to the body, and it's also going to be where we're going to hold it while we sculpt everything else. So I'm going to lay this out, make a nice little ring, kind of hollow out the middle portion of it, that way we can add a wire to this as well, and we're going to be baking this. Honestly, this is kind of a little hack to not have to use a glass container if you don't have any, so just make a little base for you to hold on to, and then you have a safe spot for your hands to go while you're sculpting your face. Once it's out of the oven and is cooled to touch, we can start covering up the rest of the foil. I'm going to make sure everything is completely covered and smooth, and then we can start adding some details to this. Now, I'm not going to be using glass eyes, I'm going to be using glass kind of spheres for the eyes. We're going to be painting over this. It's kind of just a way to make sure that my eyes are nice and smooth and I have them all the same size, because I wanted to make sure all the geckos have everything the same size, and it was just easier to have some glass little pieces to put in and then to have it painted over. So that's why there's no like eye details or anything in this, it's just a blank piece of glass and we're going to go over it later. So I'm going to take 2 of these and I'm going to push them into the sides of the face, make sure they're nice and even, and then I'm going to start building up the clay around the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of shape the head, and then after I have a little bit more of the head shape done, I'm going to start adding some strips of clay around the eyes to hold them into place. I'm going to blend those together and I'm going to try and make the eyes look nice and wide. I'm kind of going for an in-between realism and kind of cartoonsy style. I want to give them kind of funny faces, but I don't want to go like super fake. That's kind of why the patterns are going to be so detailed and everything. It's going to be kind of like a cross between cartoonsy and realism. At least that's what I'm trying to go for. After we have the eyes done, we're going to move on to making the mouth. For this, we're going to take 2 strips of clay. One is going to be the upper lip and one is going to be the bottom lip. We're going to lay out the upper lip first, we're going to put it into place, make sure we like the placement of it, and then we're going to blend it upwards. Then we're going to take the strip of clay for the bottom lip and we're going to lay this right underneath the upper lip. And then we're going to blend this downwards. And then for the nose, we're just going to take a dotting tool and we're going to kind of push in where we want the nostrils to go. After that, we just need to start adding some texture to the face. So I'm going to actually use the dotting tool over the whole surface of the face to get this nice little bumpy texture, but like a smooth bumpy texture. This is actually really time consuming, but I love the look of it once you're done with it. Now, because I'm making about 5 different geckos, I'm trying to make all the faces different, and while I was doing this I decided to make some of them with their tongues sticking out, so I figured I'd show you guys how to do that as well. So basically you're going to do this when you're making the mouth. So what you're going to do, just like when you were making the mouth to begin with, you're going to take the upper lip, you're going to lay that out and blend it in, and then you're going to take a flattened out piece of clay and lay that out for the tongue. After you have that in place and blended in, you're then going to take the strip of clay for the bottom lip and then place that underneath the upper lip and just below the tongue and then blend that in. So that's basically how you'd put a tongue in. You'd want to put it in between the 2 lip layers. Anyways, I'm going to get all my clay heads done and then I'm going to put them in the oven for probably about 45-55 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. Once those are out of the oven and have cooled, we can start painting them. So the first thing that I'm going to do for the painting is I'm going to primer my clay piece with a nice pale yellow. I'm going to start really pale and then we can brighten it up as we go. And so with the brighter yellows, even though they are brighter, they are kind of darker at the same time. The paler yellows tend to look like they're like whiter. So what we're going to do is we're going to put these more in the kind of sunken in areas to kind of define the shape of the head. And then I'm also going to be using these to kind of add polka dots here and there over the face to make it look a little bit more blended in with the other colors and to make it look a bit more scaly. After that, I'm going to take some black and I'm going to mark out where I want a few black spots to go. I'm not going to add a lot, I'm just going to add them here and there, and it's just random. After I get the black spots laid out, I'm going to take some gray and I'm going to add even tinier dots going around the black spots. After that, I'm going to let that dry a little bit and then I'm going to take a black again and we're going to go into the crease of the mouth and then the holes of the nostrils to kind of make them look a bit more sunken in and have a shadow to them. Okay, so that's basically what I'm going to do for the skin color of the gecko. Now I'm going to start working on the eyes. So I'm going to primer those a nice kind of brown color, and then I'm going to start adding some splotches of different kinds of browns and stuff like that, and just keep adding detail to it until I like how it looks. While I was doing the eyes, I also used a little bit of a metallic paint to give them a bit of a sheen. Now if you don't want to do this step, you're perfectly welcome to just buy glass eyes that are already printed and stuff like that. Makes it a lot easier, but I just kind of wanted to do my own eyes. Anyways, after I was done with the eyes, I cleaned up around them, I let everything dry, and then I mixed up some resin to apply over the surface of everything. So I'm going to let all my heads cure. I've got 5 of them set off to the side. They need to cure overnight. So now our fabric is ready and we can start on our sewing. So for the sewing, I left everything really simple. Basically, everything has a top and a bottom. So I'm going to pin the tops and bottoms for the body and the legs all together, and then we're going to sew all the way around them. Now when you're sewing the legs with the little toes and everything, you want to take your time and go really slow around it. That way you can follow the shape of the pattern. If you're going really fast, you're going to probably mess up. So I'm going to get all my fabric pieces nice and sewn, and then we're going to flip everything right side out and start putting everything together. Now for the body, I did have to cut down the belly, mainly because we're going to add a wire frame for it, and it's just going to be a lot easier to have a bigger opening for that. So we're going to start with putting the body together first and then adding the legs. So I'm going to stuff the tail portion and then we're going to run the wire frame through the body. For this, you're going to have to cut little tiny holes for the wires for the legs, so just kind of decide where you want those legs to go, make sure they're nice and even, and then just kind of put a tiny little hole for the wires to run through. Once you have the wire frame inside of the body, we're then going to take our clay head and we're going to glue that to the wire for the neck. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and then we can take the fabric for the neck and glue it around the base of the head. After that, you can continue stuffing the rest of the body and then closing it up. Now you'll notice that the tail is really kind of flush and it's not bumpy like a leopard gecko's tail. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to be sewing kind of like divots into it to make it look more bumpy and textured like the leopard gecko's tail is supposed to be. So I'm going to kind of divide it into sections, and I'm going to kind of sew and wrap thread around it to kind of make it a little bit more bulbous in spots. After that, we're going to take the fabric for the legs and we're going to stuff all of our toes first, and then we're going to add it to the wire frame. So we're going to run our wire through it, and then we're going to sew this onto the body. And then once we have it sewn into place, we can continue stuffing the rest of the leg and closing it up. Okay guys, and that's how I made a bunch of leopard geckos. I had so much fun with the new art supplies and I can't wait to use them on future projects. I'll leave all the links to everything I used in today's video for you guys down in the description, along with the discount code if you guys want 10% off before September 8th. Also, all of these are going to be in my Etsy shop, so if you guys want to buy anything, make sure to check the links down below for that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!